Hello chums, and welcome to Taming a Monster, the series where I take some of Gran Turismo 7's most ridiculous cars to see if I can tweak them so that a talentless pleb like me can handle them without being killed to death. Like any common ruffian, I'm using a bog standard PlayStation 5 controller, and I have all driver assists turned off, except for ABS. Let's see what car is trying to murder me today! Today I'm going to be very masochistic as I try to wrangle the Plymouth Superbird. Easily one of the coolest muscle cars to come from the 1960s arms race between American manufacturers, this car was done dirty by the developers in Gran Turismo 7 for a few reasons. As usual, the car has all of the upgrades applied, and no changes have been made to any of the adjustable parts. This car has no downforce, and if you fit a front splitter, I recommend setting the downforce back to 0, otherwise the Superbird will be even worse to drive. This car does have an engine swap that reduces weight and increases the fully upgraded potential power by over 100 horsepower. However, the stock engine is arguably harder to tame because its torque curve looks like the Matterhorn. You get nothing, then a gigantic spike, and then it dies off again, where the Hellcat swap actually has a smoother power delivery. The Superbird has wheels in the standard size with a wide offset, but doesn't have wide rims. It doesn't have a rear wing because the biased heathens at Polyphony didn't allow the option. It does have a front splitter, however this either makes no difference or makes things worse depending on how you set the downforce. This car also has the increased body rigidity upgrade, which is pretty much necessary. So, can I tame the Superbird? I'll spoil it now. No I can't. The test track this time actually is Watkins Glen, unlike when I tested the Corvette C4 at Road Atlanta and accidentally called it Watkins Glen. Predictably, it's all over the place, and despite having a steering angle kit fitted, you still can't rescue a slide once the rear end starts to let go. Believe it or not, I genuinely had tamed this car before update 1.49 changed the physics by effectively just dialing up the body roll. However, the physics changes have effectively made it impossible to drive cars on racing tyres without downforce. Along with power oversteer, the car also has oversteer when lifting off throttle, oversteer under braking, and short gear ratios. Wish me luck. Ow! Bugger. Tuning a car for racing tyres without any downforce is a unique proposition for me, so my tactic is to throw shit at the wall until something sticks. I increase natural frequency to decrease body roll, leaving it softer at the rear to induce understeer. Reducing acceleration sensitivity makes the inside wheel spin more than the outside, potentially decreasing power oversteer. Increasing braking sensitivity should help with oversteer under braking, and increasing initial torque should slow down the car's reactions, making it less likely to oversteer when changing direction. It may come as no surprise to hear that this didn't work. The car feels pretty much exactly the same, except there's slightly less body roll. Boo and hiss. Next, I adjust the gear ratios in the hope that longer gears might dull the car's wheel spin at low speeds. I then give the front end some toe in, which is supposed to decrease lift-off oversteer. I also further increase the initial torque to try and numb the car, and I increase the front anti-roll bar for the same reason. There's a slight improvement, but it's not much. You still have to steer extremely gently on higher speed corners. The car still wants me dead. Oh dear. Next up, I experiment with camber. Logic dictates that if you run very high front camber, the car can drift easier, and if you run low rear camber, the car will have more rear grip in a straight line, or when braking for example. The car cannot drift easier. Oh, for Christ's sake. Next, I add ballast weight. More weight means more grip after all. I also raise the front end in case the wheels have been hitting the arches. Did it work? No. Oh, for God's sake! Since I wasn't really getting anywhere, I decided to try a setup more similar to what I'd usually try on other cars. I lower the car nearly all the way, I max out the front natural frequency and set the rear only slightly lower. I then set the camber angle to 1.5 and 2.0, I stiffen the rear anti-roll bar and increase compression. Here I notice a real improvement, but it's still hopelessly difficult to control. You'd barely manage 3 corners on the Nurburgring, for example. I spent hours more with the Superbird after this race to see if I could do anything with it, and in the end, I had to resort to cheating. Typically, the easiest way to stabilise a spiteful bastard of a car is to fit less grippy tyres at the front, and I had to admit defeat here and do the same. I did find that setting a nose-down ride height made the car slightly more stable as well. Whether this is because it keeps the rear tyres in contact with the road more or turns the whole car into a downforce producing wing, I have no idea. Either way, this makes the Superbird just about possible to wrangle around most of the flatter Grand Prix circuits. As a general rule, the car handles low speed corners more or less fine, but high speed corners still require a lot of delicacy. Using racing medium tyres at the front ended up faster than racing softs all round by over a second per lap, with much more consistency. However, we're not done just yet. I've still somehow got to take this car around the Nurburgring, and with this setup, it will be impossible. To give the Superbird a fighting chance of getting a decent time, I used the 1000 horsepower Hellcat swapped car, and spent hours once again seeing what would help. I was fairly certain that I couldn't improve the car through any more suspension tweaking, so I had to resort to other means to stabilise the car. First up, I pissed 500,000 credits into a new body, where I then refitted Stage 1 and Stage 2 weight reduction, but not Stage 3, along with the body rigidity upgrade again. This way, the car was heavier, which would prevent wheel spin unsettling the car. Then came the tyres. Even racing hard tyres on the front with racing softs on the rear proved too unstable on the high-speed sections of the Nordschleife, so the car has intermediates on the front. Needless to say, this car won't work very well in any of the World Touring Car races. After 2 days of clumsily bludgeoning my head into a wall, this was as tame as I was going to make the Superbird. On low speed sections, it is now really nice to drive, and buttery smooth, as you would indeed hope with this tyre choice. On high speed sections, the car can still catch you out, mainly due to a mixture of high top speed, no downforce, and low front end grip. For me, the Plymouth Superbird represents a massive oversight on the part of Gran Turismo's developers. For starters, why give us the option of slick tyres and a 1000 horsepower engine swap if the car is pretty much impossible to drive with these things fitted? Even more baffling is the idea that we can't fit a rear wing to add downforce, because if we could, I can pretty much guarantee this car would not have the reputation it currently does for being so impossible to drive. Would it be that hard to give us the option of a small gurney flap like the R32 GTR or E30 M3 has? Worse still is that this car doesn't have downforce as standard. It's already been proven that the rear wing on the Dodge Daytona and Plymouth Superbird did indeed produce rear downforce and kept the rear end stable. Because of course they did, otherwise they wouldn't have been fitted to the real-world NASCAR variants. So the car should have rear downforce when stock. I love this car, and it's a genuine shame that its recreation in this game sells it so short. Either way, it gets a time of 6 minutes 53, 15 seconds behind a Volkswagen Golf. So, that was pretty much a disaster. I hope my settings helped, or at the very least you enjoyed my suffering. If you've tamed your Superbird, please do comment down below with your settings. I'd love to try them. If it works, I'll pin the comment so others can benefit. Thank you for watching, and if you're feeling particularly generous, I would greatly appreciate your subscription. Take care, and ta-ra. Oh, for God's sake!